Hi, I'm Jono, and if you're new here, I do pencil drawings. I'm going to be chatting to James about why hyperrealism is hard. Well, not maybe so much why it's hard, but why it feels like it's something that is so easy to get wrong. Also, this video is sponsored by Squarespace, but we'll tell you more about them later.
So in researching this video, I came across about 8 different definitions of what hyperrealism and hyperrealistic drawing actually is. Can we just establish your understanding of what hyperrealism is?
So within the field of like realism and hyperrealism and photorealism, we kind of just call it all hyperrealism when we see these paintings and drawings that look super lifelike. That could be a photograph. We just say, cool, that's hyperrealistic. Hyperrealism is particularly a type of realism that's diving into what life is like, the ugly side of life. So like Chuck Close would draw these massive hyperrealistic portraits, but not skimp out on any of the like gruesome details. So you're talking about like the wrinkles we're drawing, old age, some of the things that we're afraid to confront in the human experience. And that's from a conceptual perspective. Visually, they look very realistic or photorealistic, but there's a point that genre is trying to express. The unique thing about hyperrealism is that everyone can be a critic of it, because we all know what life is supposed to be like. We all have this reference. Whereas when you look at abstract art or more conceptual art installations, these things are like constructed from the imagination, or they're rich in concept. It's not saying that hyperrealism is harder than any of these. It just means that the people who are critiquing those works are mostly academics. They're diving into the background of the artist, the artist's relationship with the medium. All of these things add richness to those artworks. It's kind of unfalsifiable. No one can say that that's being executed wrong. It just exists and it has cultural value. Whereas hyperrealism should tick a lot of those boxes. I personally like it when hyperrealism ticks conceptual boxes, but at the same time, you don't have to know any of that cultural value. You don't need to be a student of art to be able to see that that nose is not drawn right, or the light falling on the face is not consistent throughout the artwork or something like that. Especially in the public sphere, you suddenly, if you're posting your work online, you're open to criticism because everyone can have an opinion and they feel like they should have an opinion, which is fine. I mean, if you're posting online, you're setting yourself up to being critiqued.
We've experienced that. Well, you've experienced that, yeah.
So each of these genres have their own challenge, but the bar is just so high with hyperrealism because you're continuously chasing real life.
From a personal artistic perspective, when you are sitting there and you've completed a drawing and you have your drawing and then the reference photo that you've been going off of, is that really tough, particularly obviously when you're starting out, to be able to so clearly see the difference between what you were going for and what you actually got?
It's so tough. For example, one of the things that happens is our eyes trick us all the time, where our brains are constantly filtering out information and filling in a lot of information. And when it comes to drawing hyperrealism, you're training your hand, you're training your knowledge of the medium and the technique, but you're also training your eye to see things the way that they are without as much processing as possible. So we can do tricks like turning the artworks upside down to try and make it harder for our brains to fill in a lot of details, and then we start to draw a little bit more about what we see. But even that doesn't solve a lot of the problems. From the perspective of like someone new, they have a blank piece of paper and then they have their reference. To try and just transfer what you're seeing is incredibly difficult. It strikes such a lovely balance of difficulty where it's challenging enough to pique your interest for years and years, because it can take so long to become proficient at it.
Do you just have to be like, cool, that is the best I can do right now, I can do better next time?
I feel like growth happens when you really just keep trying to push. That's where you grow. So at some point you do call it, because there are other factors that are coming into play. You can't erase paper more than a certain amount of time. So you do have to just rule a line at some point. But in terms of growing, you need to strive for perfection when you're practicing. And if you settle for imperfection, you're just never really going to push through it. And then there's the whole psychological aspect of it as well. If you never accept the level that you're at and celebrate the small incremental bits of progress, you're never going to get that dopamine hit of making progress. So you do also have to be kind to yourself, be proud of the work that you're doing. If you're beating yourself up, it's just going to be something you try, once or twice. This isn't fun, and then you give up.
So then, is it just working really hard, absolutely grinding and constantly drawing and constantly proving and constantly pushing yourself that will get you that up to that next percentage point?
I think the answer is mileage. So familiarity with the medium, and slowly but surely our brains develop to understand intuitively what's happening, and then we can start to solve more complex problems because we aren't using up all of our energy with our relationship with our pencil. The power of stepping away is quite a big thing as well. There's an interesting thing that happens, and for any artists out there, I'm sure you can relate to this. You'll finish an artwork and you essentially give up on it out of frustration. It's just not looking the way that you want it to look. And you leave it. You put it away for a month. And you come back and you look at it, and your relationship with it has completely changed. And a sense of pride builds up, and you're just like, I did that. It's perfect. How was I so critical of it? And I love that experience every time. I look at a piece like the piece that's up there, which I can't show anyone just yet. It's not going to be released for a little while. I'm so proud of that artwork as it is right now. It doesn't look like the reference. It's changed, but all the changes were my own. They're intentional, and some works, just the way that they manifest is just better than you expected.
Do you ever get to that 98% point and abandon the reference and go, what I've drawn, I need to take what I've drawn and make it the most accurate to my eye as opposed to being the most accurate to the reference?
That's something that starts to happen, I think, later on, once you've done a lot of the hard work. Often photographs and references have these weird moments in them, like a finger will just look weird. It's not weird because of the way you're drawing it. It actually just looks weird. When you look at the photograph, you're like, that's, in isolation, that's a weird part. Because drawing is a process, it's being filtered through a human's eye and brain and then their hand. We naturally enhance a lot of things, and so there'll be a flaw that might get enhanced through that filter. So we do that particularly with things that look strange within photographs. Often an artwork will look strange. It's true to the reference, and you have to then abandon the reference and do what's going to fix the composition. And it's scary as hell.
I was about to say, that sounds terrifying.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
Because you
can just mess it up.
You can mess it up.
But you just have to be brave.
Of course, yeah. It's a really interesting topic. I think particularly the whole thing about everyone being a critic of hyperrealism is probably the hardest part of it, let alone us being our own worst self-critics of the genre when you're trying to practice it. So I think being kind to yourself is the biggest takeaway. Before I end this video, I just want to give a huge shout out to this video sponsor, Squarespace. I've been working with them for a couple of years now, and they've played a huge role in my career, not only in helping me maintain this channel by sponsoring these videos, but more importantly, I was looking for a way to build a website and showcase my work, make it easy for collectors to find me and get in touch with me. And I felt that Squarespace did that effortlessly. I never had to patch or upgrade anything. I could register a domain with them and set up an online store. And most importantly, I could design a portfolio and show my work the way that I wanted to. Also, every time I got stuck, their amazing support team helped me out instantly. So if you're looking at building a website, give Squarespace a try. And if you decide that you love them, use the soft code and get 10% off your first purchase. Let me know in the comments if this is something that you've struggled with, or if you've identified that it is a really challenging genre to get into. As always, thanks for the support. See you guys in the next one. Bye.